So number one, we definitely want to go over. Are there any other ones that we want to go over?
Number
5.
Yeah, 7
Okay, so
and
five.
number 3.
5, 7, 3. Okay, so one's, wow, so the odds so far, 1, 3, 5, 7.
2, 4, 6. Sorry.
Wait, wait, actually?
2, 4, 6, 8, 10.
I don't know, I feel like in trouble.
10.
I have trouble in the identify infinitive.
The translation was
The translation.
They all look like
Yeah.
it was just the identification.
Okay. All right. So why don't we just take a look really quickly at our notes so we can have an idea of what's going on. All right. So let's remind ourselves of the different types of infinitives that there are. Okay. Now you have this in your notes, so you should be able to find it. But just so we remember, there are 4 types of infinitives that we should be aware of right now. Okay. The first one is a complementary infinitive. All right. Complementary infinitive. And you're usually going to see it with words like nole, parare, posse, timere, vele, or in animo habere. Right? So those are all verbs that kind of sound empty without having something to flesh it out, right? So I wouldn't just say, I do not want. It sounds like something else needs to go there, right? I do not want to sleep. Okay, dormire, you need that infinitive. It's completing that verb. Okay, so that's complementary. So think complementary, completing. Complementary, completing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's one usage. Any questions so far?
Well, how would we find this if we just have a translation? Like, how would we identify?
So one thing that I'm going to teach you, or that you should start to get used to, there are like keywords to search for. Like, so for example, if you see the word nole, right, you know to be on the lookout for an infinitive because you know that that verb requires it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right, or if you see like a sentence that uses the verb wolt, right, he wants, you know that there's got to be an infinitive somewhere nearby because that word is just going to indicate to you to look for one. All right, so it's kind of like a pre-reading strategy, like look for hints. All right, so for complementary infinitives, look for words like this that will indicate that there's probably an infinitive nearby. Okay, like in this example here, this first one. Okay, Marcus arbores ascendere non vult. All right, vult, it's in that sentence. He want, well here, non vult. He does not want, right? That verb, that's going to signal to you that there's going to be a complementary infinitive nearby. All right, so look for signal words, I guess is the way to word that. Okay, similarly here, infinitives with impersonals. Okay, our signal words are going to be like necesse est. It is necessary. And then you need an infinitive to do something, okay? Or licet, it is allowed to do something. So when you see words like this, necesse est, licet, placet, delectat, those are really the most common. Necesse est is the absolute most common though. All right, so when you see necesse est, be on the lookout for an infinitive, that's an impersonal. Yes?
So that means that there will be infinitive, probably will be infinitives in the sentence, not those will be the infinitives?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
It'll.
Because I thought they were most likely going to be infinitives if they were in the sentence.
No, impersonals can't be infinitive. Now, granted, when I gave you these notes, these verbs up here, I gave you them in the infinitive, air quotes, tense. Infinitive isn't really a tense. But that's just because you've seen these now in multiple tenses, so I didn't want to give you like anything to throw you off, right? Because some of them are irregular, like nole is irregular, posse is kind of weird, vele is also weird, right? Like why is it vele, but then wolt is he wants, volebat, he was wanting, like it's just weird. So I gave them to you in the infinitive form. And typically when they give you verbs like that, it'll be conjugated, like in an actual, with an ending, like he does something, or they were doing something. Does that help a little bit? Okay. So those are the first two types. Okay, so in the example over here, right, nobis neces est discedere, okay? Here's our key word, our hint, neces est. That's an impersonal, which means I'm gonna need an infinitive, and that's the function of it. It's an infinitive with an impersonal. Okay, next.
So you like underline both and then write for both of them that it's infinitive with impersonal?
So what you could do is, like, you could underline necesse est, and you can underline the infinitive, and you could say, like, so the way to word it would be like this. I'm sorry, let's make this a little thicker so you can see. Discedere is an infinitive because it is, you could say going with, I guess, or completing the impersonal necesse est. That's how you could word that. Does that make sense? So you're kind of explaining, using the terminology to tell me what each piece is, right? Necesse est is my impersonal, and discedere is my infinitive, right? Just like up here, okay, vult is just a verb that requires a complementary infinitive, and therefore ascendere is my complementary infinitive. Does that make sense? Let me see if I can find a better terminology for that.
Like the sentence can't be complete without the infinitive?
Correct.
But then, wait, what's the difference between that and complementary?
Hold on, I'm looking for something specifically. Does Latin have modal verbs? No. Okay, so then what do we call those? It's not giving me like a term for it. I think that would be helpful. Sorry, hang tight, guys. Oh, okay, that gave me absolutely nothing.
Today's Tuesday, right?
Today's Tuesday, yes. Okay, so there isn't actually a grammatical term for the word, like for these verbs that require the complementary infinitives. But you can think of them like verbs that denote like to be able, to dare, to undertake, to remember, to forget, to be accustomed, to begin, to continue, to cease, to hesitate, to learn, to know how, to fear, and verbs like that, to want, to wish, to prepare. Those are all verbs that require an infinitive in order to complete their meaning. Complete their meaning. Okay, so let's take a look at the homework examples and maybe we'll compare between those. Okay. Where are you? Okay. Okay, number one, take a look at that. All right, So yeah, can you read the Latin out loud for me, please?
Cor Marte et sexti equilibrium lactum vulgare in animo habitis.
Thank you. Okay, now, remember, anytime you see a Latin sentence, it is always a good idea to read all the way to the punctuation, read to the end of the sentence, because that's usually where your main verb is gonna hang out, all right? And indeed, what's at the end of the sentence here? What grammatical unit? Habetus, yeah, that's our verb, but it's going with something. It's kind of like that idiomatic thing, right? In animo habetus. How do we translate that?
Why, Mark?
Have
Do you mean the whole sentence?
Just in animo habetus.
Oh, okay.
Having in mind.
To have in mind, right? And who are my subjects of having in mind? Marcus and Sextus. And quick grammatical question for you. What case is Marque and what case is Sexte, Caitlin? Vocative, good, because this is direct address. He's asking them a direct question. Okay, so why, sorry, I'm just going to abbreviate, Marcus and Sextus. Now, habetus, do you what?
Can you say intend?
You could say intend. Yeah, you could do that. Why do you intend or why do you have in mind? Now, I can't just say that. I need something else. What do I need?
Stay awake.
To stay awake. So how am I going to mark up vigilare? Huh?
Complementary infinitive.
It's a complementary infinitive, right? And if you remember, think back to the list that we saw up in our notes, right? In animo habere, that's one of the instances that requires a complementary infinitive. Okay, so if you were to explain this, actually let's just finish the sentence and then we'll explain it in a second. Okay, so why do you have in mind to stay awake till when? Yep. Because that's when Taylor Swift's album's coming out, Miss Slade. Sorry, that should be a question mark. Okay. Or are you a Swiftie?
You smell like oranges.
What?
She just put on lotion.
Oh, that was just interesting.
Yeah,
Really random thing to hear.
Because she's a Swiftie, she smells like Yeah, oranges. I was like, oh.
Yeah, I was like, those two things don't really relate. All right, so if I were to explain the use of this infinitive vigilare, what I might say is something like, vigilare is a complementary infinitive because it is completing the meaning of the phrase in animo habetus. Okay, do you need me to repeat that or are we Gucci? Okay, I can. All right, vigilare is a complementary infinitive because it is completing the meaning of the phrase in animo habetus. Make sense? Okay, question.
Can you repeat again how it's different from impersonal? Because impersonal completes it, so.
Because in animo habetus is not impersonal. An impersonal is like, it is necessary, it is allowed, it is not permitted, it is forbidden, it pleases, right? The subject of an impersonal is not really a subject at all, it's just some nebulous it. That's why they call it an impersonal. But here, habetus has a very clear person, tis, that's y'all, right? And that's referring specifically back to Marcus and Sextus. So because in animo habetus has a subject, it can't be an impersonal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I was reading this last night and it said it, and I was very confused because I thought it just, like, you can take an it out of nowhere and just add it in. Or it's because there's a verb that means it.
Like an ending, you mean? Like a verb ending that means
Yeah.
it?
As all the examples are
That's true. That's true. Let me see. if I can find the example that has, if there are no impersonals, I'm gonna be mad at the textbook. No. Okay. All right, number 9. I know we didn't circle this one, but we're gonna go over it. Okay, legge latine, Jason.
Modus center,
Good, fine. All right, now, you've read to the end of the sentence. What verb, what's my main verb? Tiff,
To eat? No,
number 9?
allows, sorry.
What?
Are we in the same sentence?
Number
Like,
9?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Jason just read my sentence.
Number 9?
What? Yeah, that's one.
Are we looking at the same? Yeah, so what's
Oh
my,
wait, sorry, I was confused.
what's my main verb?
Weekend?
Liket, yeah. Okay, so this is my main verb. Now, this particular, that's too much. This particular verb, right, we're gonna translate it as what?
It is allowed.
It is allowed, right? So even though it has technically a personal ending that is third person singular, right, and it could be he or she as the subject, it's not, because is there a subject in this sentence? Is there a nominative? No, because vobis is actually dative. Remember, think of that funny white guy doing the dance? Vos, vostri, vobis, vos, vobis, right? So it could be dative or ablative. Here it's dative. Okay, in calpona is our prepositional phrase, so we circle that. All right, canare is my infinitive. All right, so there's no nominative subject in sentence number 9. Therefore, and liket is just an impersonal. Like you couldn't say he pleases, right? Because that's kind of weird, right? So you would say, it is allowed. Like he allows.
So that's the it.
So this is the one where it's it. So like it is allowed. Vobis for us, right? Because it's dative. 2 or 4 is the key word. Cenare, to dine. In calpona, in the inn.
So it's not necessarily like what the infinitive is, but it's what's around it?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, and that's what's really going to dictate the use of the infinitive and how you translate it. So instinctually, you know how to use it. I think what's confusing for a lot of you is just how do you justify, like, what's the terminology? So you would say here, to explain this in grammatical terms, you'd say cenare is the infinitive, which is going with the impersonal liket. Right? Because liket is an impersonal, it needs an infinitive, which is different from complementary, technically.
Because complementary doesn't supply the it.
Yes, exactly.
Completing the sentence.
Yeah.
With the infinitive.
Now, if I were to change this sentence up and it wasn't liket, let's pretend for a moment it was wolt. Okay. Now, how does the sentence change?
Complementary.
Now it's complementary infinitive, right? Because of the presence of this word here, it uses and needs a complementary infinitive.
Wait, so how would you translate the sentence?
So then it would be, he wants for us to dine in the inn. Does that make sense? All right, so you hear how it like changed? It's not an impersonal, just because it isn't. Like it's just not. Does that kind of help separate the two? Okay, question?
No.
No? Okay. All right, let's keep going. So we did number 1. Let's do number 3. Y'all good on 2?
Yeah.
All right, I'll just tell you the translation for it. Okay. We want to see and to hear everything because we have never before stayed the night in an inn. Okay, and we've got 2 infinitives here, videre and audire. They are complementary infinitives because of volumos. Okay, number 3. Lege latine, okay, Tiff.
Do pueri in campana eron, domine veneron.
Very good, thank you. Okay, so my main verb, actually, what do we have here? Doom clause, yeah. All right, now, think about what we remember about doom clauses. Doom clauses are gonna be my main clause or my subordinate clause? Subordinate clause, good. All right, so we've got 2 chunks here. We've got our MC, main clause, and our SC, subordinate clause. Okay, now, in terms of tense, I'm sorry, I had a brain fart. We've got 2 verbs here. We've got erant and we've got nolebant. What tense are both of those? Careful.
Imperfect.
They're imperfect, right? This one will clinch it for you. Imperfect sheep go what? Excuse me, exactly. So because these are both imperfect, are they both kind of like some continuous action? Yeah, because remember, the imperfect is the wasing, right? Continuous. I was laughing. I could still be laughing. You don't know. I didn't specify. That's different than me saying I laughed. Ha. And it's done.
And that's perfect?
That would be perfect, yeah, the simple past. Okay, so let's translate this. While the pueri were in Calpona, they were nolebanting.
Not wishing.
Yeah, they were not wanting. Good. Okay, so we got a couple things going on here. Okay, can someone talk about dormire? Why is that an infinitive? Caitlin?
Because it's completely nolebant, which is like they were not wanting to sleep.
Yep, so what kind of infinitive would that be?
Complimentary.
Exactly. Okay, now, in terms of tense, what I want you guys to think about is that time spectrum thing, right? Because sometimes the tense that they use in Latin is not exactly the way that you're going to translate it, right, Jason? Okay, just double checking. Are you looking at assignments right now?
Yeah, I'm looking at the.
Okay, just double checking. So think about what's going on. While the boys were in the inn, they were not wanting to sleep. So during that whole time that they're in the inn, are they, like, is that not wanting to sleep happening kind of at the same time? But it's continuous, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so one might argue that you could even say, as long as the boys were in the inn, they were not wanting to sleep. You could word it that way. You see, like, that's the idea, the concept behind it.
Isn't there like a preposition that means like as long as it?
I think there is.
Like, do you?
That's for a long time. As long as, let me see.
But you're allowed to just put it in there?
Because of the tense. Because of the tense, you can do that. Yeah.
That's cool.
But again, you don't have to. You could say, honestly, your trick, when you see a word, just translate it literally, and like if you're not sure. And that way you don't have to. So you could say as long as, but while is just easier and more direct.
And do.
Okay, let's see. Okay, I might have found your word, hang on. Just wanna double check it, so I don't tell you the wrong thing. Okay, there is a word for as long as. You're close. It wasn't due. It's actually quam due. Okay, it can mean for as long as, until, up to that time, which, in as much as.
In as much as. What does in as much as mean?
Huh?
What does in as much as mean?
In as much as. I'm trying to think of like an example sentence.
Wait, in as much as?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. We don't speak like that anymore. Yes.
Do you have a C temperature that I can borrow? If you don't have any, it's fine if you need to.
It's fine. Should be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I might ask for it back in a bit, but
Okay.
it should be good. That's about as far as it goes, I think.
Yeah, I think I can make it.
Yes. Okay, so in as much as is a phrase that means like to the extent which. So for example, these provisions apply only in as much as trade between the states is affected. Or let's see if I can find a better example, because that one's kind of wordy.
I'm still very close.
Okay. Use Cambridge. Maybe that'll help.
Oh, did someone drop a can of pepper spray in this classroom once?
We're not gonna talk about that. Okay, here's an example for you. In as much as you are a commanding officer, you are responsible for the behavior of these guys.
Basically because,
Or like,
because you're the commanding officer.
yeah, it's almost like since or because, but it's like a little more direct, I suppose. Yeah, it says here it's used to introduce a phrase that explains why or how much something described in another part of the sentence is true.
So it's like reinforcing previous one.
So it's like,
Yeah.
Making it more important.
Okay, another example. In as much as the funding is not available, the building plans have been delayed.
That sounds like because.
It is, so it's almost interchangeably used with because, but you don't start a sentence with because, right?
Do you
so
start
you can start
sentence
with
with
a sentence with in as much as.
Wait, so you can just replace it with in as much as?
I mean, that's what I'm getting here. That's what I'm getting here.
But this is
Say
weird.
English word.
Like, if you can start a sentence with however.
Hey, you just made
Well,
one
here's
word into
why.
4 words, it's a great deal.
So I spoke to Mr. Jeffrey and Ms. Goffel both about this, because I told you can't start a sentence with however, and you shouldn't start a sentence with, do you remember the other one I said?
And?
Four. No.
No, you could do, oh, no, you couldn't do that.
But why can't you start a sentence with however?
Alright, well, let's talk about how, there's another one, but I'm forgetting what it is. Nevertheless, sorry,
Oh yeah,
nevertheless.
and moreover.
And moreover.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, they all go
Okay,
together.
because in Latin, what those are gonna be labeled as is, come on. I'm pretty sure that's how you spell it, postpartitive. Okay, and what that means is that it is a word that does not ever occur as the first word in the sentence. It's always gonna be the second word in the sentence. Right, now remember, Latin word order or syntax is not as, like, it's not constrained by as many rules as English, right? So it would be not weird if you just put that there, like you could kind of put it anywhere, but it can't be the first word. It's usually found in the second spot, second position, right? Post meaning after. So the Latin, because the Latin words for however and nevertheless, because they are postpartitive, I think that's why English picked that up. So you could, even though it sounds clunkier, it's probably better to say, however, like after the sentence is started. So I would say, Miss Slade went to the store. She, however, was not able to find any carrots.
Wait, that means I can't say like, I dislike potato chips, period. However,
Technically not correct, although there are people, I mean, I don't know that they would mark you incorrect, but if you're gonna get nitty gritty and technical about the grammar, technically it's not right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think the example that they both used was that, like, they teach you not to start sentences with but in English, correct?
And because.
Or because, or and, right?
You can use however though. It's
Well,
the same thing.
Here's the thing. Because English is such a conglomerate of multiple languages with multiple types of rules, I mean, they're all similar families, right? They all stem from the same branch, but because, how can I explain this? Here's the thing. When you see authors do this, like let's say I start a sentence, I'm writing a poem, and I say, she was so beautiful. Okay, and then I start my next line and I say, but she had a wicked heart.
I like this sentence.
But she had a
Or you
wicked
can
heart.
merge them.
Wait, yeah, can you just turn that into one sentence?
I know, but it,
Well, I'm just saying, like, just to give you an example. So, authors in English, like established good authors in English, will start sentences with but or however, but they only do that as a rhetorical device when they want to draw your attention to something because it's wrong. So, like, you wouldn't start the sentence with but. This is just a very crude example, right? But because I've started this sentence with but, doesn't that make you stop? Does that make that, like, catches your attention on that sentence, right? And I've wanted you to do that. That's called rhetoric.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay, and that happens in Latin too. When they want to put some emphasis on a line or a particular word, they're going to switch the order of the word to make you as the reader stop and say, hey, wait a minute. You don't usually say it that way. Why are you saying it that way here? There's a reason to make you pause and hesitate. So it's an artistic choice.
wait, so like, that kind of reminds me of like a book that said like this line, but then like not the book, but like the short story that said this line, and that like the last line they changed like the order of the line, and it kind of stood out.
Yeah, and it stands out. That's a good way to word it. Exactly. It stands out because it's not the correct grammatical way to do it.
I think I'll be fine now.
You sure you want to keep using it? I'm on 20%. I got plenty.
Okay.
Yeah, you might as well.
I get hard to get anywhere below 40.
I'm a wordsmith. Just kidding. No, I'm not. That's a
My
lie.
mom gets to 50 and then she's like, oh my god, it's about to die. Me too.
It's like, you
At
have
50, you're literally.
My iPad that is about to die salutes you. Number 5. Oh, so number 3. Any questions? We good?
So there's two. Doom clause and the
And there's a complementary infinitive. Yep.
Okay.
It's a little tricky. Okay, number 5. Lege latine. Evan.
Her Nicola, her notables here, recente do Centaurus and Capella Centaur.
Good. Okay. So we've got 2 questions here. Let's take this first chunk. All right, what's my main verb? Annabelle. Good. Okay. What case is my pueri? What case is pueri?
No.
Nope. It's not nominative.
The right of.
Mm-mm.
Wait, it was the, wait.
For direct address. What's,
That located.
Oh, that's not.
Oh, wait, that's
Oh,
what?
wow. Oh.
It's a,
right,
it's
because
a,
Oh, because the ending.
istis, it's you. Istis is you.
oh, Oh, so it's like, why do you spend the night in the inn?
Yep, yeah,
Comma boys.
why, oh boys, do you spend the night in the inn?
Why, oh, boys? I should say that.
If you put boy at the end, like they did, it's still.
Still fine, yeah, it's still evocative, yep. And because this is synthetic Latin, like not written by an ancient author, they're not gonna do this, but often, a good way to catch the vocative, a lot of times you'll see O, pu, eri,
Oh, boy.
Oh,
right, you'll see the letter O like that. And that's a good indicator that that's the vocative being used.
Oh, children.
Like, oh,
I
children,
thought I saw those kind of words somewhere.
probably.
Oh, blah, blah, blah.
They do that in like old English poetry.
Oh, yeah.
So why a boy, and Shakespeare too. Why a boys? Do you or did you? Did you? Why? Because what tense is this? Perfect. Because it's got a tense marker. It's got V. What are the others? Tense marker. V sucks. That's right. Yeah.
X.
Okay. Whoops. So why oh boys did you spend the night in the inn?
Wait, I have a question. Can you just translate as why, boys, do you spend the night in the inn? Like, do you have to add the O?
No, you don't. I did it for effect because I think it's awesome.
Okay. I was thinking.
And you guys should start speaking like that too.
Nice.
Why?
Can I take you, or can you just say why spend the night
Yeah, I suppose you could say it like that. Why spend the night in the inn, oh boys, or why spend the night in the inn, boys?
Oh, Miss Slade, why do you not eat potato chips?
Well, if you knew anything about me, I could eat a whole bag of potato chips in one sitting because I am family size. All right, next.
Interesting.
All right, so in this chunk, still a question. But where's my main verb though? Is it at the end of the sentence?
No.
No!
It's licked nay.
Yeah, lick it. Well, leak it.
Need a laugh.
Yep, and why is leak it part of the whole thing?
Yes.
Well, what's the nay there for?
Well, it's a question.
Just making sure you knew that, okay. So it is what?
allowed?
For,
Is it
allowed?
good, is it, because it's a question, is it allowed?
Is it allowed?
Now, for, we're looking for a dative. Do we have? Us, e, o,
Wait,
o.
Oh,
Filio, so this is my dative indirect object. Now, senatores, let's think. Ex is, ema, es ibus, es ibus. This is genitive, yeah. Okay, and then,
Oh wait, that's side deflection.
yeah, senator, senatores. Okay, so is it allowed for the filio, for the son?
Wait, is it son or sons? Is it?
If it were sons, it would be, filiis. Right, because think of blah blah blah. Second declension masculine. Us e o, that's singular. E orum is os is. So it would be filiis.
Why is senator son? Why is the son indirect object?
Because typically with impersonals they use the indirect object for whatever reason. Like it is allowed for somebody to do something. So instead of
So how come in the previous sentence it's boys, like plural, and then now it's just one son?
because only one of them is technically the son.
The Sextus is in this one.
Sextus is he's a ward of the Cornelii.
I was gonna say I remember, I can't English today.
That's okay. This is Latin.
Wait,
Oh, Tiffany.
since Cornelius is a senator, does that mean they're rich?
Yep.
But I mean, they live in a huge.
Because remember, in order to campaign, you have to have money, and you have to have status.
I mean, I could just go run for the president of the United States.
Well, you could, but you wouldn't get very far because you don't have campaign money. But that's also where like things get a little funky because who pays for presidential campaigns? companies that probably will want a favor down the line from the president whom they paid to help get into office. So there's a conflict of interest. So think about that next time you vote, which will be a couple years from now.
Well, the thing is like, you can't like, what was I gonna say? Things like, I don't have enough like status, like, what did I do in life? I went to Stony Brook School.
Is it like nicer in the city than in the countryside? Like which one? Like,
For the Romans, you mean?
yeah.
For the Romans, if you are wealthy, you will have a city dwelling because that's where you need to be when it's like politics season. But then you would have like the countryside second home for your family to go retreat to when things get bad. And you see that throughout history, like the aristocrats would live in Florence and then they'd go out to their like vineyard in the countryside when things got too hot in the city.
Or people invaded.
That too.
They still have the house in the countryside?
Yes, so they still, even though they're like going to Rome, that house still exists and it still needs to be managed by the this
Like
guy,
Alice.
Willie Kuss, the farm manager, the overseer. So he's gonna keep things running while the family is not there. Long Island actually used to be like that a little bit. Long Island was originally a place for summer homes. It was not a place with houses that people lived in all year round because it was a vacation spot for the rich. That's how this place started.
It's like your beach house. You're not gonna go to your beach house in winter.
Exactly. That's how it started. But it's not that anymore.
That gotta be a long time ago, right? Because there's school here, Stony Brook.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. I'd say, So I know a 93-year-old woman, she was telling me that when she first moved into her house, well, she was born in the same house that she grew up in.
Wow.
And that was like a summer shack, if I could put words to it.
A shack?
Essentially, yes. But it was a summer home that some rich person didn't want, so they just like left it, I guess, and she and her family kind of like bought it and moved in.
Oh wait.
So it didn't have like the amenities that a normal household would have. Eventually it did, but like a lot of the houses out here did not have that. I mean, granted, there were like historical pockets of spots on Long Island, like this one, that was involved in the revolution and all that fun stuff, right? Like Washington Spy Trail, right? That's a little different. But other parts of Long Island were kind of just summer homes, vacation homes for the wealthy. Yeah, Long Island is kind of like a really weird mishmash of things. Like if you really get into the history of it, there's like different divisions, different, what is it? You got like the North Shore, you've got the South Shore, then you've got the middle, and everyone's different.
Where are we?
There's a long island.
We're on the North Shore.
Oh.
How are people on the South Shore? Like do I hear-
Mr. Brumman
Right
would
now-
draw like the Long Island and be like,
Well, it also depends on what part of the South Shore you're talking about too. If I can, I'm a little biased too because I'm a North Shore girl. If I could like explain the types of people that are there now, this is not historical, right? The North Shore peeps are like sailors, and the South Shore peeps are power boaters. That's the difference. Yeah. Power boater.
Oh.
it's like
That tells a lot.
It does. It's different types of people. Yep. Yeah. So
Wait,
it's.
is Southampton?
It's like Mr.
part of-
Brumman complaining about
Is Southampton part of?
I think Southampton is technically like in the middle, like right before it splits off, or it's like really close. But it. That's a good question.
Isn't Southampton in the south?
We're in the north?
Well, because Southwold is on the North Fork. No, I don't want the football club.
No wait, I think Southampton is like relative to like another place rather than Long Island. Because like I know
You're right. Southampton is on the South Fork.
That makes sense.
So yeah, that does make sense. Well, there's Southold, but that's on the North Fork. So
Wait,
there's
then why
weird.
is it called Southold?
Beats me. I didn't. There's no North Hold. I don't know. I didn't name this place.
it's like South.
Yes. Yes.
Can I go after you?
Yes.
Honestly, so there's this funny story I saw. So the story was about someone who, as a prank to one of like a really rude like construction worker, like coworker, he put a chest of fake coins, and the coworker found them and then resigned because he thought he was rich.
That's pretty sad.
It's
I
extremely
miss
bad.
coins.
I mean, I checked it.
So there's your translation. Is it allowed for the son of the senator to enter into the inn? Okay. Thank you.
How did we even get from this to Long Island?
I don't know. Oh, the country.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, let's trace it back. So if you asked about country homes,
Like rich stuff.
and you asked about why is it one son
Yeah.
and not, yeah.
Oh.
Yep, there we go. That was the
Mrs.
toilet bowl,
Brown
just
would be
went.
very disappointed in us if we didn't know we're on the North Shore.
Mr. Bromer got so mad at me because on the first day of Pelham, he was asking everyone like where they lived relative to Stony Brook, and I was like, I don't know where I live. And
That's
he
fair.
got so mad at me.
He started yelling at me because I didn't know which way I was. Like, I knew which way I was, but I couldn't point to it because I didn't know,
I
like,
can point to which way I live.
So can someone explain to me why intrare is infinitive? What kind of infinitive is it?
A-R-E.
Well, okay, so that's how we know it is an infinitive in form. Why do we need one? What's its function? Caitlin?
Cause it goes with likitne, which is it allowed, so, it's, like, the subject is it, so it's an impersonal.
Good. Yep, exactly right. Okay, so is this starting to like make more sense now? How to use the definitions, or how to define, rather? Alright, let's do this one quickly. In via pernoctare periculosum est. I'm pretty sure this was the example sentence that I gave you in your notes. Right? So in via, whoops, prepositional phrase, we're going to circle that. And periculosum est, right? It's kind of like an impersonal, but not exactly. Okay, this is an infinitive. Alright, let's take a look at our notes. Beep, boop, bop. Beep, boop, bop. Look at all the stuff that we did. Amazing. Oh, I did use similar. Okay. It's an infinitive as the subject of est.
oh, but I remember you mentioned this.
Okay, so it's similar to the impersonal, but not exactly because it's not an impersonal, right? Because it is the subject. So, let's go back down.
It is dangerous.
Exactly. So you would really say, pernoctare is kind of acting as the infinitive subject of periculosum est. So you would say, you would translate it as the subject. So to spend the night.
On the road. In the road.
In the, yep.
Wait, why would it be on the road? Like, in the road?
You could say on the road. Spend the night on the road, est periculosum, is dangerous.
How about, how does this differ from impersonal?
Because it's not, impersonals are a very specific thing, like it is allowed, it is pleasing, it is this. Periculosum est is not really, so our main verb is est. Periculosum is an adjective. So because technically we're translating it, like when you have est, what kind of verb is it?
When I have est.
Is it an action or linking?
Linking.
So because this is a linking verb, think of it as an equal sign. What you have on one side of the equal sign has to be on the other. So if we were to kind of put this into English word order, you would say pernoctare est periculosum. Okay, this is our subject, and it is equal to this complement, really. Okay, so to spend the night is dangerous, which is different than an impersonal. An impersonal, like, it is pleasing to do something, or it is allowed to do
it's like
something.
transitive.
What's
Transitive verb.
Transitives take direct objects, intransitive do not. It's transitive. Not technically, because there's no direct object here.
No, I mean, impersonals are like normally transitive, the verbs there.
How is it transitive?
It's like, it is blah 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 to do something. Like, he orders the slaves to blah 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 blah, like.
Well, he orders the slave, that's different, that's different, that's a different use of the infinitive, that's the fourth one. It's accusative and infinitive, right? He orders the blank to do blank.
I don't think we went over the fourth one.
Then how is it in the notes?
I don't know, I don't have it. Oh yeah, I have that.
I was gonna say, okay, I wrote it, it should be there, it was in the notes, like,
Yeah.
there's no way. Okay, like you see how, so to spend the night is dangerous. Is not a verb that you would consider transitive or intransitive. That only happens with other verbs, like, she hit the table, right? Hit is transitive because the table is, the action is being transferred from she to the table. But she laughs, that's intransitive because it's not taking a direct object. There's no transfer of action from she to nothing, right? So that's intransitive, no direct object is taken. So here, it's just not applicable because, where are we? There it is. Because it's a linking verb, it's not like an action verb. Action verbs are the ones that you want to declare as transitive or intransitive, not is.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If, like, you said she laughed, that's like an intransitive verb, right? What if I said like she laughs at the flower?
At the flower is a prepositional phrase,
So it's still intransitive?
still intransitive,
Oh, okay, I see.
right? Because it's transitive only if it can take a direct object.
Oh,
She drank the soup, right? The soup is being drunk by her. If you can reword it and flip the subject and the direct object, it's probably transitive.
the soup was drunk?
The soup was drunk by her.
Drunk by her? Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not, so est is not transitive or intransitive, it's just a linking verb. That only applies to action verbs.
Oh, so I don't think I need.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm on 12%. Nice. Okay, let's just go over number 10 real quick. Ego et tu cubitum ire nolimus. All right, so, sorry, noluimus is our verb. This is my inf, it's my do. Ego and tu are both my non-subjects. Okay. Ego et tu, you and I.
I wrote I and you.
Ah,
Oh, I wrote, oh no,
I was gonna write I and you.
I was
and then
going
was
to, yeah,
wait,
and then I was
that's
like,
not
wait,
right.
in English?
yeah.
I was
In
writing
English, we
I
don't do that.
wrote I and you, and then I thought it sounded weird, and then I remembered it was you and I.
Yeah, so you and I, noluimus, did not wish,
Oh,
Oh, yeah, it's.
oh,
ire cubitum, to go to bed.
Wait,
I
I did
did
get
not
that
want.
misleading.
You what?
I got the to go.
To go? Oh, finally. Finally. All right, now this is an infinitive. What kind of infinitive is it and why?
Complimentary.
Yeah, because of what word?
did not want.
Noluimus. Good.
No, no.
Okay. Is this better? Do we kind of understand the uses of the infinitive now? Yeah.
This is kind of a hard homework.
It was a hard homework. But I think to help you, I would like you to give a try. Exercise 20E.
Wait, exercise or activity?
Exercise.
Oh, so it's just using the story?
No, not English to Latin.
This is fun.
Okay, it's going to be tricky. We don't do this too often, but I think it's really gonna help you think about what you're doing grammatically.
Wait, do you have to write like the Cornelia, like the
Wait,
Cornelia in
V2.
You don't have to, you can, well, just make it quotes, because when you say, never mind, scratch that. You don't have to, you could just put the quotes, whatever she says or he
Okay.
says.
But it's from the chapter. Premeditate.
Yeah.
Will we do this?
Yay.
Do you have to